I think Salah and Fatima actually did a very, very good job. I really, I think they laid down a lot of the groundwork. I want to try to personalize this a little bit to everyone in the room and see what are the next practical steps that we can take. I have some gifts to give away for people that participate, inshallah. I know it's near the end of our, 45 minutes, so I am hoping to be able to keep your attention, inshallah. So let's just get an idea from the room. What percentage of your current income do you think you need at retirement? So think, if I made 50,000, what percentage of that? Do I need 50%, 100%? Go ahead. 20%? Okay, fair answer. Listen, come up and get this. This is a car magnet to keep your phone up so people don't get tickets. My understanding is Illinois has changed the law and it's going to be a huge fine soon. So whoever participates, feel free to come up. If you don't get a chance, we do have some more at the booth, but I really want to encourage participation. Go ahead. 80%. Okay. 15. Go ahead. 25%. 45. 35. Okay. So let's stop there. Let's just talk on this. I'll pick on you since you raised your hand first. What's your name? Abdullah. So Abdullah, if you're making, let's keep the numbers simple. So let's say you're making $100,000. You said 20%. So at the time of retirement, you think you can live off of $20,000? I don't understand. Oh, save $20,000 a year so that you'll be able to, okay. So let me change the question. I'm trying to get an idea of how much of your current income, so how much of that $100,000 do you think you'll need every year to live off of at retirement? All of it? I heard all of it. I heard 80%. The correct answer is 70. Go ahead.
I was going to say that whatever your living expense now is, you're going to need to have it when you retire.
Sure. Sure. And that's why we're asking for a percentage just to get an idea. So the industry average, they say between 70 to 80%. So I want everyone just internalize that. And the answers that were given, 25, 30%, those aren't incorrect. Let me take you to a story. Let me take you to a conversation I had with my wife. My wife's like, when we retire, we won't need that much money because inshallah, our house will be paid off. Our kids will be done with college. We have young kids, mind you. We didn't have the 1.5-year-old when we were having this conversation, but this was her thought. And so I pushed back a little and I said, okay, you're thinking maybe we can do with 50%. So if we were making $100,000 now, maybe we can live off of 50,000. So I was walking her through it. I said, even inshallah, if we have our house paid off, sadly, we live in Illinois and we live in a county called Cook County. Many of you that live in Illinois probably know it as Crook County because of the fact that the taxes are outrageous here. I see a few nodding heads. I live in it, so I know how it feels. So I said, even if we don't have a mortgage, our taxes on the house itself is probably going to be $1,000 a month, roughly, just because of the county we live in, the area we live in. So keep that in mind. And then I said, okay, let's park that aside. I said, alhamdulillah, we have 4 kids. If one of our kids came to us and said, Mama, Baba, I really want to buy this house, but I need some help. Do you want to be able to help them? I see a few yes and I see a few no's. The no's are probably with the kids that are older that are giving them a hard time. I'm still at yes, wavering though. So keep that in mind. My wife happens to be of Syrian descent, and she, mashallah, helps her cousins in Syria right now because we all know of the ongoing tragedy there. May Allah give them relief and let them go back to their country. But, I said, do you want to be able to continue to help your cousins? And she said, yes, of course. And so then I said, you always talk about wanting to travel. We have young kids. It's a little hard to do it. Do you want to be able to do that at the time of retirement? She's like, yes, of course. I said, our kids go to an Islamic school and we go to the fundraising dinners or to the masjid fundraising dinners. I said, do you still want to be able to donate? She's like, no, forget that. So now if you keep all that in mind and you want to keep your lifestyle what it is now, think about that percentage again. I think the percentage really goes up to 100% that a few people set. So if you're making $100,000 now, at the time of retirement, you'll probably want to be able to make $100,000. Now, the question goes back to what some of you thought I was asking. How much of your current amount do you have to save to be able to get there? And this goes to some of the calculations that both Salah and Fatima shared with you. If you start at the age of in your early 20s, you can get away with saving about 10 to 15% of your income to get there. I'm looking around the room and I see a few people that are in their 20s. I see a lot of people that are not. I started saving a little bit later because as Brother Salah talked about, I did not have the choice of investing my retirement in Islamic institutions, so I was worried and I didn't do it. That was not the right decision. Alhamdulillah now, because the Islamic institutions have grown so much, a lot of our funds you can find on the large platforms, on the Fidelities, the Schwabs, wherever your company offers a 401k. If you choose the self-directed or the open brokerage option, there's a very good chance that you'll be able to get the Islamic funds. I'll use my wife as an example again. If you guys see her, please don't tell her I've used her as an example so much. She'll probably charge me extra or something. I'll have more dish duties or something like that. So anyways, my wife works at a hospital nearby and they use Schwab. Alhamdulillah, she has this option. So 100% of whatever she's contributing, whatever her company is contributing is going to the Amana funds because she can buy them through her 401k. That choice is there. So going back to keeping it practical. Now, if you don't start in your early 20s, that just means you have to save more. That does not mean that, oh no, I heard the numbers. If I start in my early 20s, inshallah, if I save a certain amount, I'll be able to get to almost about $1.2, $1.5 million. And if I start later, just 10 years later in 35, I'll have half of that. Only about, $600,000 to $700,000. And what does that mean? Does that mean, oh no, forget it, I'm 35, I should just stop. I'm just gonna khalas, I'm gonna make sure I raise one of my kids good enough and that I can live with them. So, make sure they earn enough and make sure that I can live with them, that I pick their spouse, that the spouse doesn't hate me and I'll live with them. I think everyone's laughing because we all know how impossible that is. So keeping that in mind, that means at 35, you just have to save a little bit extra. And as we know of a couple of hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of them is the best deeds are the ones that are small, that are done continuously. So leave here not with the intention that I'm older, I can't do it, but with the intention that I am going to start today. I'm going to go online, I'm going to open an account, I'm going to set an amount that they take out of my account every month so that I'm not thinking about it. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to, this month I'm going to do $50. This month I'm going to do $200. You just decide, today I decided I'm going to do $200 a month and I'm starting. And then I see, alhamdulillah, that $200 is not affecting me. I'm going to increase that. Fatima used an example of $450 a month. The example to really get to some of the numbers that I wanted to share, if we had a PowerPoint, but inshallah we can share at our booth, are closer to $600 a month, is where you should try to get to, depending on the age that you're at. Now, people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, $600, I can't do that. Most of you pay a cell phone bill probably close to $100 or a couple of $100. If you cannot give your future self at least that much money, believe me, your future self is not gonna be happy. But if you do that, and when, inshallah, I'm somewhere else, hopefully happily retired, please keep me in your du'as because you said you did do it and you were seeing the gains that you were making. I want to step back a little bit and touch upon a couple of things that my colleagues didn't get a chance to. Now, most of you are here because the session is called Islamic investing. So what's different about Islamic investing? We all have mutual funds, and mutual funds are like-minded funds with a similar goal. So you'll see mutual funds for technology companies. You'll see mutual funds for healthcare companies. Our mutual funds, all of their goals are the same, is to be Islamic, to be halal. What does that mean? That means the first thing we do is we make sure we filter out all of the haram. So back in 1984, when we started our fund, a group of people very similar to the people in this room got together and said, we need an option for the Islamic community to be able to save for retirement. Because every time I would walk into the bank when I was young and I had some money in my checking account, they would say, hey, open the savings account, get some interest. And then you say, we can't do that. I mean, that's a clear riba. No matter how many excuses you want to make for riba, there's no excuse for that one. And so the conversation would keep happening. So this group of people said, okay, let's find an alternative. So they got together with a group of ulama, and at the time, mashallah, the group of ulama happened to be the Fiqh Council of North America, and they said, can we invest in this thing called the stock market? And they said, everything in Islam is potentially halal unless it's clearly haram. So what does that mean? That means you have to take out what is clearly haram. Alcohol, pork, pornography, gambling, riba. You can't invest in those. Those are clearly haram. Okay, then what? Then they said there's also financial measurements that you have to take. You cannot have a company that has more than 33% debt. You cannot have a company that has more than 45% in accounts receivables. And you can't have a company that has more than 5% in secondary income from a haram source. Now, what does that mean, 5% from a secondary income from a haram source? So let's take two companies as an example. We have Bed Bath & Beyond and Southwest Airlines. How many people think that Bed Bath & Beyond is okay to invest in? Few hands. Okay, how many people think Southwest Airlines is okay to invest in? Few more hands. Okay, so let's think about this. Someone usually shouts out by this point, Southwest Airlines sells alcohol, so it's not halal. And I see a few people shaking their heads. But let's think about this. Southwest Airlines, their primary goal is what? Travel. Correct. MashaAllah. Beautiful answer. Please take a magnet as well. And so Southwest Airlines, they're halal because their primary source is traveling. The income that they get from alcohol usually is very, very small, and it's a secondary. So it has to be under 5%. We're not invested in any airlines, but that's just the overall idea. Now let's think of Bed Bath & Beyond. What's their primary business? Merchandise, buying and selling goods. And they were actually a really, really good stock, one that we used to own along with Amazon until they started selling what? Alcohol. That's correct. So many people think Bed Bath & Beyond, alcohol, that doesn't make sense. What happened is in their spa section, they started selling wine. And, I was doing this presentation at a school in New York. There's, mashallah, a very large Guyanese community. And we do 401ks for small companies, large companies, Islamic schools, etc. And the Khali, when I asked, why do you think Bed Bath & Beyond is not halal? She's like, the bed in the bath is fine, but who knows what's in the beyond? And I wish I could do the Guyanese accent, because when she did it in the Guyanese accent, that's really, the whole teacher staff, mashallah, had a good laugh. So a few things that I want to touch on before I end. One is many people think if I do Islamic finance, it's going to cost me more. Whether it's on the home financing side, which is not the subject of today, or it's on the investing side. And what I can tell you is if you go back and you look at the historical numbers, some of them that were shared, some of them that we can get into more details of, that's not true. You'll find that when you look at the Islamic finance mutual funds, a lot of people that I talk to that are in other funds currently at work, and they look at it, they're like, wow, you outperform them. Wow, you outperform them. I mean, that's a common answer that we get when people look at our fund and compare it to what they have now. The other thing that, mashallah, both of them spoke on is I've seen over and over again, being on the home financing side and now on the investment side, the barakah that people get when they decide to make a conscious decision to go with Islamic is immeasurable. It's measurable. I've seen it being measured, but it's immeasurable in the amount that it brings in their life. I've seen people that really wanted to buy a house. They could not get Islamic financing, and so they passed on it. They could have gotten conventional financing, and then a couple months later, they call and they say, we got the same type of house for much less. That's happened numerous times, sometimes with imams, sometimes not with imams. But that is something that I've witnessed firsthand, and I'm sure many people in the room can share stories of things that they've seen when someone makes a choice for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to them. It's Hadith Qudsi. If you go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala handspan, He comes to you in arm's length. You go to Him walking, He comes to you running. So since you guys were here for this, I wanted to make that clear. Alhamdulillah, it's not a hard choice anymore. When I first bought my house in Chicago, long time ago, there was no Islamic finance available. When it was available a couple of years later, it's first thing I did was I refinanced out. what I financed with wasn't a conventional financing. It was something more like what my dad had done, which was get a few people together and help someone buy a property. That is no longer available in America because of how large our community has become. So keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. The last few things that I wanted to touch on is many people, I gave you practical examples and practical numbers of how you can save. By our booth and on our website, we have something called the Halal Allocator, which means if you go there and you take a quiz, it'll help you and it'll tell you out of the 4 funds that we have some high risk funds, some middle of the road risk funds, and then we have a brand new fund that's very low risk, capital preservation. If any of you have a business or if you keep money on the side that you don't want to put in the stock market, then it'll help you decide which one of those and what percentages to invest in. We're trying to make it very, very easy so that from starting to beginning, we're able to help you with all of your financial decisions. The other part that I wanted to mention when I was talking about the halal allocator and what percentages is that many people do not invest in the stock market. And the reason why they don't is, when do you think we hear about the stock market the most? Historically, we've heard about it the most when the stock market goes down. Now the stock market is up, so we're hearing a lot about it because the stock market is up. But many people just think, okay, the stock market is down, it always goes down, I don't want to invest in it. But as, mashallah, both of them had mentioned, historically the stock market has gone up. It's one of the best places to invest your money. If you're thinking of investing your money in real estate or local businesses, please come talk to us. Talk to us about our experiences in doing that, or talk to other people. We had a client that came to our booth yesterday. He invests in real estate. He's a physician locally. He invests in real estate. And him and I were talking, because I also had invested in real estate, and we're talking about how much headache comes with that. And then I asked him, I said, what is your return from your real estate investment? And he said, well, in one, I get between 6 and 8%, and the other, I get between 9 and 10%. And I told him, I said, well, if you didn't want any headaches, and you just took 2 of our oldest and largest funds, then you would historically get a return of about 11%. Better than real estate, but also with no headache. Again, we've all made lots of jokes about our kids and possibly living with them when we retire. But the bottom line comes with, if you have kids and you have real estate and you want to spend time with them, that's also something that's very, very difficult to do. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking of doing real estate. So my goal was 3, to help people understand that the stock market is not scary. And you have Islamic options. Alhamdulillah, everyone has covered that. To make sure that everyone understands why it's important to invest now, I think I was able to do that. And the last one was to make sure that it was very clear that the importance of saving for retirement and the last part of Social Security. We talked about how much of your income you need now, and Brother Salah touched on Social Security. The average paycheck that someone gets in Social Security right now is about $1,500. Anyone that lives here in Chicago or any high, expense area knows that $1,500 is not going to do much. So let's think about that for a second. Let's think about, even if your rent was $1,200 and before you retired, you had bought a new car, and we're in the Muslim community, so we know that car would be a Toyota Camry. So even if you bought a Camry, one of the most reliable cars, a few years before you retired, by the time you're a couple of years into retirement, it's a very good chance that your car will need repairs. And if those repairs cost $300, that month of $1,500 to $1,200 plus the $300, do you have anything else left? Are you going to be able to have a cell phone at retirement? Most of us, I know myself, my knee hurts because I had ACL surgery. Every time I walk, I think in retirement, if something broke, how would I pay for it? So if you're thinking Social Security is going to be your cure to retirement, just know that there's a very good chance that it won't be enough. And that's if it's around, because I'm sure many of you have seen the articles about Social Security being defunded or bankrupt by the year 2034. For most of us, that's well after our retirement age. So keep that in mind. In closing, I want to leave you guys with just 2 points. Alhamdulillah, I told you how we started 34 years ago, what it took. It took a few people within the community, people just Look around, people just like you that decided, hey, we need an alternative. I told you that they went to a group of ulama. The standards that that group of ulama set, by the way, are very similar to what Fatima referred to, which is IOFI, which is a group of scholars now internationally that have come together that are Islamic finance experts. So that's the beauty of our deen, that some of the ulama here in America had the same idea as the ulama now that are Islamic finance experts, because our deen has laid down the different ways to get to something and the different criteria that you have to use. So that's something to keep in mind. And alhamdulillah, now we have a historical record. One of the other people that came to our booth yesterday, they were talking about, oh, you know, it's hard for me to track some of the mutual funds that I'm in because after 2-3 years, they close down and they open a new one. Why do you think they do that? Anyone? Go ahead. Performance is not good is the answer. So you'll notice there's a lot of mutual funds that change because the performance is not good in the industry. So they'll 2-3 years, they won't have it, so you can't go back and see the history. The Islamic funds that you see, the 34 years, the 25 years of performance that I was mentioning that we have, it's been there from the beginning, and he was really happy he could go back and see it because it made it very easy for him to compare it against the S&P, against other mutual funds that are in the market, against mutual funds that they might be holding now. So keep that in mind. If a mutual fund does not do well, they usually shut down and start something else. So there's a lot here. And if you go and you look at the rankings of the top mutual funds for 15, 20 years, you'll find that the Amana funds ranks as one of the best funds, which is why, alhamdulillah, it's been very, very easy for us to get on 401k platforms, to get on Fidelity, the Schwabs, the Vanguard, some of these other places. Don't feel that just because your employer is using that, that's not a way for you to be able to get into the Islamic funds. Inshallah, with that, I'll close. I know we all have booths. We're all in the C level, so please stop by. Those of you that answered questions, please come up and get magnets. I also have pens for everyone else that did not answer questions. They're really nice. And then we have brochures. And then the last thing I would say is don't be scared to ask questions. I know many of you guys are. We'll stick around as much as we can, even after the session is over, maybe outside. And if you're young, I wish I did this when I was young, just come by and talk to us. It's free. Your parents dragged you to come here maybe anyways. Get something out of it, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.